Here we are again, back with another country talk. What country are we doing today?
Greece!
All right. Now, I'm pretty excited about this one because Greece is one of my favorite countries. So, the first thing I want you guys to look at is this map of Europe over here. Ian, can you show me where Greece is on this map of Europe? How about you, Cleo? Right there, right?
Oh, Greece is Turkey's enemy.
Well, yeah. So we'll talk about that later. So important things to notice about Greece, okay, is that Greece is the tip of a what?
Peninsula.
Of a peninsula, right? It's got water on every side, and
Some of it's a island.
Right, that's true. All of the water that is around Greece. Greece is a very important country in this big sea, the most important sea in Europe, and maybe the most important sea in world history, which is called what?
The Mediterranean Sea.
The Mediterranean Sea. And there are two smaller seas. Remember, the Mediterranean Sea, they divide up into different smaller seas.
It's the Mediterranean Sea and Black Sea.
The Black Sea is not actually next to Greece. So the two seas that I want to talk about over here are between Italy and Greece is the Ionian Sea. And between Greece and Turkey is the Aegean Sea. So those are the two very important seas for Greece. And then I guess there's another one that they call the Sea of Crete that is between Greece and its biggest island, which is Crete. And then of course, remember all the other countries that are around the sea, like Turkey, and Lebanon, Egypt, Tunisia, they're all practically neighbors because all you have to do is go across water to get to those other countries. So remember that there was a lot of interaction between Greece and all these other areas thanks to the Mediterranean Sea. We're going to move over to the big map of Greece over here. And if you look at Greece carefully, you'll see there are a lot of islands, especially in the Aegean Sea. There are hundreds of islands. The largest island is this one that we call Crete in English. And then there's this big lump over here that at first it almost looks like an island, but then you realize that it's connected to the mainland. And this large southern part of Greece over here is called the Peloponnese. And the capital of Greece is Athens. That's a very famous city going back for thousands of years, a very important and famous city. So very important to know about Athens. And then of course almost all these islands in the Aegean belong to Greece. There's just a couple in the very, very northern part over here that belong to Turkey. But Greece otherwise owns all the islands, even the ones that are very, very close to Turkey, just a few miles away from the coast of Turkey. And that's, like you were saying, is a very, very sore spot between Turkey and Greece. When we go back into history, in terms of European culture, and of course our own culture, which comes from European culture, Greece is one of the most important countries in terms of the origin of the ideas, the art, everything that goes into our culture, Western culture. And a lot of that starts far back, more than 3,000 years ago with a civilization that was called the Mycenaean civilization. And what we know about them, a lot of what we know about them comes from some books that were written about a war. Do you remember what those books are and what that war was? It wasn't. The Romans were not around yet at that point. This was before the Romans. We talked about these
Trojans.
Right, the Trojan
and the Greek.
The Trojan War. The Trojan War. And those books were actually not even written then. They weren't written until much later. They were just stories that were told from one person to another person. But the original person who's believed to have told those stories, do you remember his name? His name was Homer. Homer. And those stories were called the Iliad and the Odyssey. So a lot of what we know about Mycenaean civilization comes from those stories, the Iliad and the Odyssey. So that's so far back, it's almost like legendary times. And we don't even know how much of those stories are true, but we do know that there was a war, that was real.
It was called the
Trojan War.
Oh, and is it because they found this kind of temple that was actually destroyed by fire, I guess?
You know, I don't remember all those details, Ian, but we do have to keep moving. So, after the Mycenaean civilization came and went, there was another age that was very, very important. This was about 2,500 years ago, and it was called the Golden Age of Athens. And the reason why the Golden Age of Athens was so important to Western civilization is that a lot of people lived around the same time that had a big influence on culture and science and created many of the principles of science, mathematics, and art that we still use today. So there were some very famous playwrights who lived then. Do you know what a playwright is?
Like William Shakespeare?
Like William Shakespeare, people who write plays. They came 2,000 years before William Shakespeare. Their names were Sophocles, Aeschylus, Euripides, and they wrote plays that are still famous today that hopefully one day you guys are going to read. One of the most famous doctors of old times, his name was Hippocrates. When people become doctors today, they still have to say the oath of loyalty to patients that Hippocrates first wrote. Philosophers, people who spoke about how people should act, how they should think, how they should approach life. Their names were Plato, Socrates, Aristotle. They lived at about this time. And mathematicians that you've heard of. Do you remember Pythagoras? Do you remember the triangle? Remember the right triangle? The square of one side plus the square of the other side?
He made the most famous equation.
Right, the Pythagorean theorem for the right triangles, the length of the sides of the right triangles, and a lot of other things, a lot of other mathematical things. And then another mathematician who lived around that time, do you remember the one who had to find out if there was silver inside the king's golden crown? And then when he figured out how to do it, he jumped up and ran naked around in the streets. Do you remember what he said? Eureka! Eureka. His name was Archimedes.
Archimedes.
Yeah.
What does Eureka mean? It means
Eureka.
like I did it.
I found it. I've got it. Eureka. And people still say Eureka today. So after the Golden Age of Athens, a couple of hundred years after that, came another very, very important era. That was called the Macedonian era. Macedonia is the northern part of Greece over here, and a man named Philip became king there. He came up with a plan to conquer all the territory, but he died. He couldn't do it, but his son did, and his son is one of the most famous people from all of history. Alexander of Macedonia, also known as Alexander the Great. And Alexander conquered a huge amount of Europe, Turkey, all the way to Persia and Egypt. And that is why the descendants of Alexander actually replaced the pharaohs of Egypt.
Is that when Cleopatra?
Right. Cleopatra was a descendant of Alexander of Macedonia. She did not come from the pharaohs that were before her. Alexander conquered Egypt, and his family replaced the pharaohs, and that's where Cleopatra came from.
Is it gone now, the part they took from Turkey?
Well, remember that the land stays there. The land doesn't go anywhere. It's who controls the land that changes. So yes, the whole empire, after Alexander died, the whole empire fell apart.
How?
Because people took it back. If you don't know how to keep the territory, it's just like in Risk, right? What happens? Somebody's going to take it back next term. The next people who came into Greece and took over Greece was another group that you mentioned earlier that you know very well.
Greek.
The Romans.
No.
The Roman Empire came and took over Greece.
And the Roman Empire was big.
The Roman Empire was extremely big. It controlled all of Southern Europe, all the way to England.
Is it like the Romans versus the Trojans?
No, that never happened. The Trojans were long before the Romans, 1,000 or more years before
Did the Romans get any part
The
of it?
Romans came through Turkey, and they were in the area that's now Lebanon and Israel. They built temples there. They even made it to Egypt, although they didn't really conquer Egypt. But remember that we're here to talk about Greece. So the Romans controlled Greece, but they took a lot of Greek culture with them. So you know how all the Roman gods, right, before the Romans eventually became Christians, the Roman gods were taken from the Greek gods. All the planets are named after Roman gods. Jupiter was taken from Zeus. Mars was taken from Ares. So basically, Greek culture had a huge influence on Roman culture, which in turn ended up having a huge influence on all of European culture and now American culture.
Wait, so when Rome was, so that's when Rome had gladiator fights.
That's right, Rome had gladiator fights, but remember, we're here to talk about
What are gladiator fights?
Greece. We're going to talk about Greece. When we talk about Italy, we can talk about Rome. After the Roman Empire, what happened to the Roman Empire? That happens to every empire. They got too big. And they could not, there was no one person who could control all the empire. Eventually, the Roman Empire split into two halves, the West, the East. Greece became part of the Eastern Roman Empire, which then became known as the Byzantine Empire, which was essentially Greece, these countries, areas north of Greece, and what is now Turkey, were all parts of the Byzantine Empire. That lasted about 1,000 years. And then it lasted for about 1,000 years. Then about in the 15th century, and about the year 1453, the Turks conquered Greece. So
the Ottoman Empire.
Right, the Turks became the Ottoman Empire, Greece became part of the Ottoman Empire, and that lasted for about 400 years. That the Greeks were actually subject to the Turks and the Ottoman Empire. Finally, in about 200 years ago, the Greeks fought back against the Turks and the Ottoman Empire, and they got their independence. And 1821 to 1829 is when Greece finally really became an independent country. Now Greece is a democracy, which means they vote and they choose who is in charge, and they have freedoms, which is good because Greece is actually the place where democracy was invented. Athens was the place where democracy was invented. So it's good that Greece is a democracy now, but they haven't been a democracy for the whole 200 years they've been an independent country. They've had some military rule, some dictatorships, but for at least the past 40 or 50 years, they've been a democracy. So let's watch a quick video about ancient Greece.
Ancient Greece was born on the shores of the Aegean Sea about 4,000 years ago. In over a millennium, it expanded to lands as far west as Spain and as far east as India. Throughout this age of empire, the ancient Greeks made political, militaristic, and cultural achievements that resonated long after their empire fell. Part of the ancient Greeks' legacy involved politics, one of which was the political system of Greece itself. Unlike many nations that were under unified rule, Greece was a collection of over 1,500 territories that acted as sovereign nations. Called city-states, these territories had their own rulers and sometimes fought each other. Another political development was the institution of the first large-scale democracy. Developed in the city-state of Athens, democratic rule was a way to give the Greek people representation and political power. The Greeks also earned a strong reputation for their military. The military helped expand the Greek Empire by establishing colonies overseas, and it protected Greece itself from foreign invaders like the Persian Empire. When such a threat occurred, city-states united to defend their homeland. Many Greeks, particularly in Sparta, took immense pride in their military and regarded their soldiers as heroes. Their heroism was often turned into legend thanks to literary works like the Iliad. War heroes also inspired the creation of the Olympics, which celebrated physical competition. Of all aspects of ancient Greek civilization, their cultural contributions left a considerable mark on the Western world. Particularly noteworthy were the ancient Greeks' art and architecture. They created incredible sculptural works, such as standing figures and reliefs. Plus, they developed 3 types of columns and incorporated them into structures like the Parthenon. This artistry was imitated by other civilizations and spread throughout the globe for thousands of years. How the Greeks interpreted the world was also reflected in other cultures. Greek religion, which was comprised of many anthropomorphic deities, helped shape the spiritual beliefs of the Etruscans and later the ancient Romans. Greek philosophy, which explored matters of reason, ethics, and natural law, influenced later civilizations' achievements in politics and science. Greek language made quite an impact as well. Ancient Greek, at about 3,400 years old, provided the basis of many modern languages. The English language alone has thousands of words with Greek roots.
You guys have seen some modern Greek culture here in Miami, right? Because you've gone to Greek festivals, you remember, and you've had some Greek food, and we've seen Greek dancing. You guys remember the Greek dancing?
Oh yeah, they wore these tops was like da 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 da.
Right, and they dance in circles.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, is it like this? Like.
Yeah, kind of like
Yeah.
that. Let's go ahead and watch the Greek dancing for a little bit. Okay, now you guys remember that when we travel, right, what's one really important part of traveling for us?
Then we go to the market.
We go to the market and we
try their street food.
We try every kind of food
Why do
that
you
they
call it
have.
street food?
Street food because it's food that we don't get in restaurants. It's because you don't get it in restaurants. It's because they can make it right there on the street or in little restaurants that are right up the street. That's what they call street food. So this guy, we've seen him before. He's gone to almost every country in the world and eaten whatever food that they have, and street food, restaurant food, all kinds of food. So we're gonna see a very typical kind of Greek food.
So we just ordered our souvlaki, thank you very much. And this looks incredible. I'm ready to eat this. So no Greek food tour is complete without the famous souvlaki. So this is maybe one of the most loved foods in all of Greece. And basically it consists of the pita bread on the outside. And then here we've ordered the pork, so he grills it up on this massive kind of column of pork. And then inside we've got onions, tomato, tzatziki sauce, which is like a cucumber yogurt spread, and then actually French fries in there too. And it was a really cool spot we just ordered it from. He actually has an automatic kind of meat slicer. It's sort of like a handheld power tool that he uses to cut the meat off the column of pork, and I've never really seen anything like that. But we've come down to this really beautiful square here in Athens to eat our souvlaki, and this will be the last thing we're eating today on this food tour. So this thing is quite hefty. You can see there's a ton of ingredients in here, especially a lot of that tzatziki sauce. So I'm just gonna kind of try to take a big bite here, try to get everything. I'm not sure if I will, but let's see if I can.
So remember that a large amount of Greece is on all these islands. And so Greece is a very kind of a diverse country because the life on the islands is very different from the life that is on the mainland. And there's really no other place in the world that's exactly like the Greek islands. They're incredibly beautiful. Some of them were made by volcanic eruptions. And we're gonna see one island called Santorini and what it looks like. That was formed.
That kind of game that we have.
Right, well you'll see why that game is called Santorini. This is the city of Oya,
Oh yeah.
which everybody goes to Oya every afternoon to watch the sunset.
Is it good? Is it beautiful?
Yeah, it's a beautiful sunset. It's supposed to be one of the most beautiful sunsets in the world. But it's very crowded. That's the only thing I don't like about Santorini. 1.5 million people come there a year. And it's kind of the island that everybody goes to in Greece. So I don't think if we went, I don't think we would go to Santorini because there are other beautiful islands just as beautiful that don't have as many people.
Look at those blue dolls. They just look just like a game, like those windows.
Yep.
They make it so realistic.
So what's the other thing that we always do? We did food, we did dance.
Learn the language.
Yeah.
The most used informal greeting is ya. Ya. Ya means hi, hello, or goodbye. We use it when we meet, but also when we leave. We should only use this greeting with friends or relatives. If you want to be more formal, you need to pay attention to the time of day. The most common phrase is kalimera. Kalimera. Literally, kalimera means good day. However, we may also interpret it as good morning or good afternoon. As a rule of thumb, we can use kalimera only during the daytime, from morning until early afternoon. During the late afternoon and evening, we say kalispera. Kalispera. Espera or spera is ancient Greek for the part of the day after sunset. So kalispera means good afternoon or good evening. Kalimera and kalispera are used when we meet someone, but when we leave, we don't say them again. In this formal situation, Greek people use adio. Adio. Adio means goodbye. If you're leaving after around 8 p.m., you can say kalinichta, which literally means good night. Kalinichta.
There's only one other word I want you guys to know.
Thank
all right?
you.
Thank you.
And
that
please.
is, well, please, I don't know, but let's just do thank you. Okay, thank you is efharisto.
Efharisto.
Okay, so thank you is efharisto. Do you remember good morning or good day?
Yeah.
No, ya is hello.
Oh.
Good morning or good day, kalimera.
Kalimera.
Right? They all start with kali. And then good afternoon, what is kalispera?
Kalispera.
And good night is kalinichta.
Kalinita.
Kalinichta. Nichta. So
Kalinita.
kalimera, kalispera, kalinichta. And thank
Kalispera,
you.
Kalinita.
And thank you is efkaristo.
Efharisto.
So guys, when we go to Greece, what I want to do, of course, you have to come to Athens when you fly in. And then after Athens, what I'm really excited about is I want to go and I want to drive around this big Peloponnese over here and see all these ancient famous cities around the Peloponnese. And of course, they have incredible beaches and seafood.
Do
You
they
know what
have
they love?
Roman?
You know what they love to eat actually in Greece?
What?
It's something you guys like, octopus.
I
That's
don't
like
really,
their
I don't
favorite.
like it grilled.
Well, they eat a lot of it grilled. And then when we go to the islands that I picked for us when we go are these two islands, Naxos and Paros, these two larger ones over here. And then we can see if we have
But
time
we're not
for
going
more.
to that other island, right?
Santorini, no, I don't really want to go back there because like I said, it's just too crowded and too touristy. So remember, all right, Greece, right? What's the capital of Greece, Ian? You remember?
Athens.
Athens, right? The Mediterranean Sea all around Greece, the smaller parts of the Mediterranean Sea between Greece and Turkey is the Aegean Sea.
The Aegean
Between
Sea.
Greece and Italy is the Ionian Sea. The largest island in Greece is this one.
Crete.
Well, we
Crete.
call it Crete.
Crete.
All right. In English, we call it Crete. Most people have never even heard of the next largest island. It's called Evia, and it's right next to the coast of
I
Greece.
didn't even notice it was
over
there.
here. Right, but that is that is an island over
It's almost
there. So that's the
connected.
next largest one. But it's not really very touristy, so most people have not heard of that island. And the third largest island is this one over here in Turkey called Rhodes. And that's a very famous island that a lot of people travel
Will we go
to.
there?
I don't know. I'm not sure I'm that interested in going to Rhodes. It's kind of far.
Do people live here?
Of course, people live everywhere. On almost every one of these islands that you can see, people live. And they have their own tradition, their own history. Some of these really tiny islands are really fun and beautiful.
How
So
about
that's something
Santorini?
for you guys to look forward to in the future when we can travel again, okay? And that's all for now.
Bye.
The Greece countries of the world. Bye-bye.